Hello, everyone. Today I'm talking to Zeeshan. Welcome, Zeeshan. He's from Pakistan, and he's going to share some secret tips and advice to help you improve your fluency and tell us how he became fluent. So, Zeeshan, when did you start learning English?
First of all, uh, Jennifer, I hope that you're fine and good afternoon to you there in Costa Rica. Uh, Basically, I started learning English language from my school age. When I was studying in my school, uh, we used to study English at school. Uh, we had teachers and we had a setup. We used to, study English at school, but it was pretty late when I came to realize that there is a lot of room for improvement in my English language. So after that realization, it was then that I basically started, working on my language skills. I started working on my grammar, my pronunciation, accent, sentence structure, and all those. And it was about 2 to 3 years before when I joined the university, when I started, working on my English language skills. And today I can say that I have improved a lot, and I can jumpstart a conversation with a native speaker just like I'm doing now. So yeah, I've improved a lot. I've improved a great deal.
And you said you started when you were in school. So, did you go to an all English school or did you just have one class in English, but you studied in your native language? How did that work?
No, it was not an all English sort of school. It was an Urdu medium school as we have in our country. But we used to study English, every now and then. We used to have a special period that was dedicated for English language. We had a teacher. So I just want to basically emphasize that yeah, we are learning English from our school level, but basically even after going through all those years of tedious learning of this language, still uh, there are only a few people out there who are really able to jumpstart a conversation with a native speaker, or who can speak fluently, or who are able to communicate themselves. So yeah, we are learning in our schools, but my school in which I was studying, it was not an all English school. So yeah, we used to study English.
And why do you think that is? Because I've heard many students tell me that I studied English all throughout my school years, which is very common for most countries. I studied English all throughout my school years, but when I graduated, when I finished school, I couldn't understand native speakers. I did not feel confident having a conversation. I couldn't actually use English in the world. Why do you think that is?
I think that's a really very important point, and I think I really want to emphasize on this point because I think that the education system is, I would say, responsible for this because we are, just trying to teach kids just, a bunch of vocabulary and maybe about the grammar and all those things, but somehow we are not empowering them or motivating them to, to be able to speak. The main purpose of our learning English at our school or our university, especially in non-native countries like Pakistan, is to be able to communicate effectively in that language. But yeah, as you have mentioned, that even after passing through all those working through those tedious time, very few people can communicate effectively. I think it has to do with the education system. They are not empowering basically the students in a way so that they might be able to communicate themselves effectively in English language. Although it is a very important language, it is a dominant language, and we need in almost in every walk of life. So I think it has to do something with our education system. We need to upgrade our education system in a way that when students come out of school or their university, they should be able to confidently communicate themselves in English language. Otherwise, what's the use of it? Why teach English? I mean, so yeah,
Yeah, it's a very, very true point, and something, like I said, many students. So if you're watching and you feel you went through your entire school period and didn't feel confident at the end, just know that's very common.
yeah,
So that happened to you. You recognized,
yeah, yeah.
okay, I need to still improve my English skills. So what specific steps did you take? What process did you use? What was your study routine, your methodology to improve your English?
Basically, first of all, Jennifer, I, pointed out the gray areas in my language on which I had to, work upon. And then I started consulting quality material for improving, my language skills, for improving my grammar. I started reading newspapers. I started, listening to podcasts. And most importantly, I want to mention here two things which I did, which really helped me in improving my language skills. And number one is diary writing. I used to write diary a lot. At the end of the day, I would sit down and write about my daily routine, how did my day went on, so it helped me in refining my language skills. Point number one. Second, I started speaking with my fellows, with my teachers. Students feel very much hesitant or they don't feel at ease while speaking with their fellows. But in my case, you know, I thought let people say what they want because I as I mentioned that students are not motivated to speak. If people from my country are listening to this, I want to tell them we should motivate students. So when they are not motivated to speak, they don't really improve themselves. So what I did was I started speaking with my fellows at the university, with my teachers. So it provided me confidence to refine my language skills more and more. And that is the way I, gain a lot of confidence regarding my English language. Yeah.
Excellent points. And I've recommended this to all my students. You've probably heard me say you should keep a journal, diary journal. They're the same thing. Keep a journal, write about your daily routine, summarize your day, which is
Yeah,
exactly
of
what you
course.
did. And also, you said you just practiced speaking with people who were available to you. Now, what if there's a student watching right now and they say, but Zeeshan, but Jennifer, I don't have anyone available to me. I work from home. I live in a non English speaking country. There is nobody I can speak to. What advice would you give to that student?
I think that the modern methods and technologies have created, a lot of space for uh, such people, who are working from home. You can book a tutor online nowadays and you can have a conversation with him. You can select a topic of mutual interest and then you guys can go on speaking about it. And if you're working from home, of course, you have your family members, your siblings, brothers, sisters, and all those. You should start speaking in English with them. So in that way, you would be refining not only your uh, language and communication skills, but they will also be getting benefit out of it. Nowadays, I think it's not an excuse, if I'm allowed to say.
That's a good point. And I've shared this before that one of the best ways to learn something is to teach it to others. So,
Yeah, of
even
course.
like you said, if your brother or a sister or family member, even if they don't speak English or they have a very low level, teach them what you're
Of course.
learning. It's a great way to practice. Now, what bad habits did perhaps you have when you were trying to improve your fluency, or what bad habits have you seen that many students have when they're trying to improve their fluency?
I think that Jennifer, when it comes to language learning, I think that it's really very important to underscore the psychological aspect, of language learning. When we are exposing ourselves to a totally foreign language, then we are at unease, we are hesitant. I think that's what most of the students are doing. When if I talk with respect to my own country, as I mentioned earlier, we study English at school level, at high school level, at universities, but even then we are not able to speak because they are basically hesitant, and deep down psychologically, I think they are not ready to accept that new language. It seems alien to them. And with that thinking, with that psychology, if I'm allowed to say that, or with that set of thinking, it's really difficult for you to learn something new. First of all, if you want to learn a new language, then you have to embrace the differences. Of course, uh, every language has its own pronunciation, accent, and all those. When we speak here in English in our country, sometimes people come and say, "What is this? Why are you speaking in that particular accent?" So they basically demotivate us. So I think those are some factors which don't allow you, or those are the bad habits, I would say, that don't allow us to study. And apart from that, uh, students at the school or university level, I think they are not giving the due attention that should be given to English language. Because, let me elaborate on this. English has become the lingua franca of the modern world. You find English speaking people in every nook and corner of the world. With such an important language, you need to give the proper time and emphasis to it. If I talk in terms of my country, English is of very, very, importance. All the competitive examinations like CSS and PMS, if you have heard of those, they are in English. So we need to give the proper time, and we need to put proper energy into learning this language if we really want to improve ourselves in it. I think these are some points which come to my mind.
Well, it's great that you spent the time. And of course, all the students watching this, you're spending the time right now. So that's great. You're showing that dedication and improvement. Now, Zeeshan, you mentioned the psychological issues, because I hear this a lot. A lot of students say, even if they do have a high level of English proficiency, they're scared. They're too afraid to get out there. They're too afraid to go to job interviews, start conversations. It's really that fear, which, of course, fear is psychological. So, do you have any specific strategies that you used to overcome that barrier and allow you to start conversations with people?
I think that's a really very interesting and important question at the same time. I think, first of all, the first technique which I would like to recommend to students is to practice a lot. You need to keep yourself in practice. Like you can go and stand in front of the mirror and you can talk to yourself, like in English language, about the topics which interest you. So in that way, you can minimize your fear or any other psychological issue, if I might say. Secondly, you need to face your fears. For example, if you're afraid to speak in public, if you're afraid to speak in front of your friends, then you need to do the same. Go and speak with your friends. Also engage them in language learning. And I think by facing your fears and by practicing, that's a really very important point. You need to keep yourself always in practicing. You need to practice a lot if you want improvement, because practice makes a man perfect. You have heard the saying. So that's the, I think, recommendation I would give.
Great advice. Practice, practice, practice. I say this
Yeah,
all
you
the
say it a
time.
lot.
And I love how you mentioned that you just to do it. There's that Nike expression, just do
Let's
it.
do it.
It doesn't matter if you're afraid, just do it. Just do it. Great advice. Now, I don't know if this is an issue you had, but I hear a lot from my students that I learned so many different words. I have this big vocabulary, but then when I go to open my mouth, I forget all my words or the words just don't come out. Is that something that you struggled with? And if you did, how did you overcome that or what advice would you give?
I think absolutely that is an issue, with non-native speakers, when they try to use the vocab that they might have learned somewhere, you know, they just sometimes forget because, I think it's quite natural to be in that position. And I also sometimes face that issue. And what do I recommend to, overcome that issue is you again the concept of practice comes in. You need to use those words which you have learned in your daily routine. I mean, you need to incorporate those words into your daily life. If you're just, if you have a list of words, 100 words, and you are just rote learning it, then I think it would be really difficult for you to use them when you really need them. If you want to have an active, here comes the concept of active and passive vocabulary. Active vocabulary is that which is in use, which you're able to use during your conversation. So you need to practice a lot, incorporate those words in your daily routine to use them. Secondly, I would say writing. It is a habit which is diminishing, from our society because we are too much attached to the technology, or people are all the youngsters are spending their whole day surfing on the internet, and these arts, I would say, arts, these skills are slowly and gradually diminishing. So sit down with a pencil and a paper and try to write on a topic. Start writing about something that interests you, about which you are I mean about which you have a particular interest in that way. Those words which are there in your unconscious, when you start to write, they will you know come down and in your expression. So in that way, I think you can basically incorporate, or use those words which you had learned someday in your daily routine. I think that's the piece of advice I can give to students.
I completely agree with you. And again, everyone, it comes down to practice. So put that in the comments. Practice, practice, practice. And it's interesting you talked again about writing because I always have a pen with me. It's by my side all the time. It's in my purse. Everywhere I go, I have a pen. Writing is such a great
Yeah.
skill and it does take that passive and turns it into active as well. So great advice. Now, Zeeshan, you have made so much progress with your English. So share with us, what are your top goals for your future and why do you think your English skills will help you achieve those goals?
Uh, I think it's a really very interesting question. Uh, First of all, I am working so hard on my English language. The first reason is I basically want to go for the top examinations in my country. As I had mentioned earlier, for the CSS or the PMS, I think you might have heard of these examinations. And in these exams, English is the most important component. We have to ace about 12 exams, and all those have English as a major component. So I'm trying to work on my English language more and more so that I might be able to, crack those examinations, and I might be the part of the bureaucracy of my country, and might be able to work for my people in my country. Secondly, I think this is what really interests me. I am not learning English for the sake of learning. When you're learning a language, you are basically exposing yourself to a whole new culture. You're exposing yourself to whole new ideas, philosophies. literature and all that. So I also want to travel around the world in the future whenever I get the chance to do so. So I'm trying to improve myself more and more in this language, so that when I am able to go around the world, so I may not be facing any difficulty, talking to people and all that. So these are my long-term goals, and English is really my love affair.
I'm so happy to hear that. And I'm glad you have both professional goals and personal goals as well. That will really help you stay motivated. So, Zeeshan, if my students watching were only to do one thing, they can only do one thing this week to improve their English fluency, what should they do?
I think that I should lay a lot of emphasis upon writing, because nobody's talking about writing out there. We are listening to podcasts, we are listening to audiobooks and doing all sorts of things. But I think is writing is, as I mentioned, is diminishing from our society, where I don't think that we write too much nowadays. So I would suggest students to incorporate this habit of writing into their daily lives. Uh, at the end of the day, just sit down with a pen and paper and try to write about your daily routine. How did your day went on, uh, your experiences and all those things. It will not only help you in improving your communication skills, but it will also provide you with an opportunity to do some reflection about that day. So I think, it would help you in uh, both these ways.
I love that. And I love that you include it's also a time for reflection. You're writing about your day, your life. You can look back on that a year from now and it will be the best story you ever read because it's about you. So, everyone, I challenge you follow Zishan's advice and write for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, just summarize one day this week. So I challenge you, put challenge accepted in the comments. Put that in the comments. Challenge yourself to write just one time this week. Summarize one day. Well, thank you so much, Zeeshan, for being here and sharing all your amazing tips and advice. It was such a pleasure having you on. And please, everyone, put thanks, Zeeshan. Thanks, Zeeshan. Put that in the comments as well. So thank you again for being here.
I am also really thankful to you for having me here, and I think it has really motivated me, to improve myself in this language further and further. It's really a great platform for students and youngsters like us, where we can come and share our experiences, uh, the way we learn our language, and also it provides motivation to all those learners out there who might be struggling with their language skills. It's also a motivation for those people, to keep on learning. You need to constantly keep yourself in a state of learning. In only in that way you can improve yourself in any language. You don't need to give up. Always keep in mind that whenever you're learning a new language, you should have determination and perseverance in your mind. It's not a one day affair. You cannot learn a new language uh, in a month or 2 months or so. You need to have perseverance and determination. And with that, you will see that things will get better and better, and you will start improving day by day. So thank you very much for having me, Jennifer.
Thank you, Zeeshan.